Do you often see Zidio on my channel? This is when some channels channel in. Telegram tells how shitty everything is in. Russian army. You also often see stories of the soldiers themselves about the resets, barrage detachments, and other joys. Russian army. And many can say, but these are separate episodes, an isolated case, and generally a fiction. So today we'll talk about current Russian general who tells the same thing, but also gives orders to reset prisoners and collects their cut-off ears. It's important to say it's gigantic. Comprehensive investigation of the project. Schemes. I'll leave a link to it. Video version where you can hear audio messages and read correspondence. The investigation itself can be included. Russian subtitles. I highly recommend. See the original. Not the Jimishtaba Academy, the Pishtab Academy. Damn, zero preparation, collective farm workers. Nobody gives you time to prepare. There is no satisfaction in. Va. Fuck, let's catch up with this stewed one. Landing, and we have the FSB. Vomit. Well, they're all bastards, they don't. Men, they're not responsible for their words. In general, Teplinsky needs to be pissed. I think I'm too much of a dude. I want to go faster with this army, with this one. Ended war, lagoons. Pussy's panties. Who is Roman Demirchev and why is he? Are words important? Demirchev in the investigation. Described as a man with a long war for shoulders. He is 49 years old and comes from Kazan. This is Tatarstan, member of 2 Chechen Wars. In the 23rd year, he received the rank of Major General by decree of the President of Russia. Further, begins what can be called career for the war. In correspondence, according to, given the diagrams, he actually discusses his promotion and who breaks through to him. Job title, for 2024 journalists. Fix him as a deputy, commander of the 20th Combined Arms. Armies in the West group of troops. He is participating in force management in Lyman. Direction. This is not a soldier story. And trench that can only see its own. Trench. This is the look of a man who communicates with generals with counterintelligence, to whom they bring, as he himself says, prisoners as resources that he himself reports upstairs. That is this internal language of the system, and in level of the command structure from which tens of thousands of people depend on it. Authenticity. All messages, audio messages, and correspondences have been checked and double-checked. Again, check out the investigation. It specifically describes the mechanisms, checks, and not only verified by ourselves, investigators, but also many others. Publications that, in fact, became. Study this investigation after how it appeared. It is the combination. Cynical attitude towards people and simultaneous hatred of one's own. Army creates a portrait of the Russian war. This is a war of people who despise everyone, around, and above, and below, and on the other side of the front. It's more of a diary. A person who wants to be effective. An occupier and is furious that the system is not. Can even do this. The first thing that is constant pops up in correspondence, a feeling. Managerial collapse. In one of fragments, he literally reduces the situation to the formula. No connection, no control. Here are the words about fear that come. Immediately followed by, they are afraid and shabby. This, very important to understand why. Russian assaults so often turn into a meaningless meat grinder. When not, communication and control, there's no normal maneuver. All that remains is to push forward stupidly. The second motive is zero preparation. One of Demirchev's voice messages describes how people are turned on at night, and in the morning they're sent into battle. Key. The formula is zero preparation. And here, it is important to hear not only swearing and fatigue, but specific organizational model. They give people a ride. They pick them up. Spend. Do not form units. They don't teach interaction. Essentially, this is conveyor where quality is replaced. Quantity and the price of this quantity, measured in deaths. The third motive is losses that break through in numbers. What are the scariest moments? Investigations in terms of scale. Precisely because it is every day. Message in daily numbers. 17,200. 27300. Unknown. 165. Then it sounds. Phrase about what is most likely unknown. They were burned. That is, they didn't even take the bodies. This is the real price of an assault on Russian army. Not heroic legends. About lists where obscurity is almost a synonym. That's it. There is no person. Fourth motive. Contempt for superiors and career. Verticals. In Demirchev's correspondence. Describes his immediate commander as stupid and says that he is afraid for his own skin and therefore sends subordinates to the front, as if Demirchev himself. Something different. That is, logic from above. Down looks like this. The higher the position, the less risk for yourself. Risk. Distributed down to those who can. Donate. The fifth motive is imitation. High technologies, for which emptiness hides. Demirchev mention that the declared miracle weapon is not ready and does it work, and he only has one. Eagle eye repeat, we are not obliged to accept his words as technical expertise, but as evidence of inner spirit. This is important. People inside the system understand that cartoons are not the same as reality. Superiority, and that much rests on threats and PR. Another motive. Relationship with one's own security forces. To the guards, he speaks harshly about the FSB, reproaches her for watching theft and who stole how much instead, in order to actually protect the troops. The original is a bunch of homophobic slurs. I won't reproduce them anymore because the task is not to relay his language, but record the facts and devices of the system. But the general meaning is clear. This is a war where control and fear are more important than efficiency, where any commander is afraid at the same time, enemy, and is afraid of his own controllers. There's another layer of his criticism, which shows internal culture. Officer environment. He is not in correspondence. Just swears in specific. Bosses. He defiantly devalues an entire army of institutions, which is official propaganda, presented as an elite. For example, in Investigation contains his remarks about paratroopers and Marines, where he calls them nothing more than cockerels. Offices, that is, the language, well, derogatory prison hierarchy. Important. The dial. There's no command building inside. No brotherhood in arms. Contempt, mutual deprecation, and fighting. For awards and positions. And, at the level, personal motivation periodically. War fatigue breaks through even. Such a scumbag and degenerate as this. Demirchev. In correspondence, he says that he wants to get out of this army as quickly as possible. From this war, accusing others of lying. And cowardice. Sevent motive. And honesty about enemy. The investigation includes fragment where Demirchev is irritated. Her, and even speaks with respect about perseverance. Ukrainian stronghold. After massive fire, according to him, Ukrainian fighters continue to hold out, and Russian bodies lie nearby. But if remove the shell of hatred, all that remains is fact. Writes that Ukrainian defense is experiencing what it should have. Erase it according to his plan. And here, we come to a fork in the road because we can, would be to say, well, yes, the army is a mess, but all this has long been known. But further in, correspondence begins with something that explains, why is this war even possible? The system is not only ineffective, it moral and criminal in its routine. This is the most painful part and, unfortunately, the most revealing thing about this investigation. In these materials, a prisoner of war does not look human, who needs to be fed, treated, and then exchange. He looks like an asset. His can be transferred, used, and recycled. And this is not a metaphor. This is language of correspondence. Let's start with the episode, which became a symbol of the photo investigation. Cut off human ears and conversation. About the garland. Of them. Before. Continue about people. An important detail about background of these correspondences. In materials. There is a separate episode of the present time, in my opinion, about jokes and quotes. Over animals. The general will be sent a video where a live mouse is crucified and interrogates. Of course I won't. Insert it here. How do they do it? Call voiceover. Demirchev reacts very approvingly. I do a lot. I saw this from the front, especially when there was an invasion of mice. I think it was in autumn or spring. And there they did it with mice. Pretty monstrous things. Because there were a lot of them, but didn't know what to do with them. And so they decided to take revenge on the mice. Well then, there's every possible way to mock them. There. One more stroke is described. Demirchev himself sent a picture of a meme with a caracal and caption, it's not a crime if. It was fun. This is generally global. Funny meme. Like irony and mockery. Such people and over such situations. But when it's used, what? Called, for its intended purpose. Justifications for atrocities, this is not at all. Damn, it's not fun. Why isn't it? Outside story? Because it demonstrates how inside this environment, the line between the game of violence is blurring, and real violence against people, and how quick humor becomes an excuse for torture and murder. The text of the system describes dialogue between Demirchev and his wife. She asks what to do next. She answers, I'll collect a garland and give it as a gift. In response to a photo with a human ear, he responds like pig ears to beer. That is, it's not just about the general, it's including his wife. Self. Investigation emphasizes establish. Details of the origin of the photo are not provided to journalists. Succeeded, but the context shows the binding to the war in Ukraine by the autumn period. 22nd year. Why is this important? Even if we don't know whose ears. Because this is not an apply question. Forensics, this is an indicator of the norm. Inside the Russian army. If a person with this conveys the general status, and this is discussed in the family as almost an everyday joke, means a moral prohibition. Torture, bullying destroyed. Not to mention the Chechen big train, and how the paratroopers also cut off their ears in. At best, what is called among corpses. At worst, even among living people. Further communication. Counterintelligence army. In the text. Investigation, a Greek character appears. Which, well, that's a call sign, which journalists describe him as an employee. Military counterintelligence. It was for him. Demirchev regularly transfers prisoners, calling them gifts. Key phrase for it looks like this for me. Recycle. Or give it to you. This is no longer a war. This is, you are already dividing people as resources between structures. Then direct discussion. Torture as a tool for obtaining information. The scheme version says that Demirchev explains they just didn't have time. Torture the prisoner and offers counterintelligence use tools that make a person talk. The truth, that is, torture is perceived as a normal working method. The only question is time available. Another hitch. Prisoner as an instrument of pressure on relatives. Really scary things. The investigation says that counterintelligence is interested in whether there is. The prisoner has parents, brothers, sisters, to then work with relatives for the sake of information and recruitment. This is important. Speech, not only about crimes against specific prisoner of war, but also about an attempt to expand the crime to his family and environment through blackmail and compulsion. Further, murder-like. Correct outcome. When in correspondence, the phrase didn't live long appears, the answer sounds almost like a doctrine. I'm personally for recycling. This is not just cynicism. This, a sign that the idea of prisoners is necessary. Save does not work as a value. The idea works, prisoners can be destroyed, if it's easier that way. But perhaps the most scary story. I'll add a judicial episode. Executions, command reaction. In the diagrams, a voice fragment is published. Messages describing a murder. Prisoners with sapper blades, and after they were taken into the blanket. Russian language version of the investigation is supplemented. According to journalists, the speech is about former prisoners of the Russian units that committed reprisal, and Demirchev reports on. This chief, the commander of the army. And next is the key. The boss suggests, submit performers for awards. Necessarily, the meaning of the scene is much broader. Specific episode. You see many people I have met and often. There's an opinion in discussions that, well, okay, we're talking about war. There's all sorts of things. It happens. Yes, well, someone screwed up the tower in. At some point, remember Vietnam, and so, further. Well, excess of the performer. To someone. The urine just hit his head and he killed. Prisoner of war, cut something off for him, and stuff. But we see this is not. Excess of performers. This is how. Crime is part of the norm. Management, the absence of punishment is already encouragement in itself, but direct. Offering a reward is already. Institutionalization. This story fits into a wider, documented trend. A mission forte. Monitoring of human rights in Ukraine. Reports an increase in executions of captured Ukrainian military. The mission received. Analyzed photos and videos and interviewed witnesses, assessed. Messages as reliable. We ourselves with. Have you seen the footage of the execution? Prisoners of war by Russian troops. That. There is when we see the internal. Correspondence about the murder of prisoners. We see. Not an isolated madness. One of the facets. General pattern. This is very important. Understand in this war, especially when there are discussions going on. Oh, what's the difference? Under whose flag the territory is, and so on. The difference is big because Russia and the Russian army at the moment is sadists and murderers. Not only violate international conventions, everyone is already on them. Dick has long been forgotten, but they do it with pleasure and do it with some sadistic mania. Prisoners are people who survived the battle and then fell into a situation of absolute dependence. And in correspondence, we see that this dependence turns into a field for sadism and managing fear. This is what means Putin's war on Earth, not mythically defend Donbass and destruction of human dignity. Before we move on to, because I have no sentiments. The Russian army is not only towards strangers, but also to my own people. I will remind you that you can support this video with your like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. To me, it seems important to spread such things, especially on the anniversary. Full-scale invasion, because many people see this situation perverted like the struggle of some tall uncle for some resources or everything. Such. No, it's literally an army. Barbarians who came to kill people and does it. Ukraine has no choice. In the war, do not end the war. Ukraine protects itself and its citizens from this one, from the Hemerkey scumbag who cuts off people's ears. Here's how. This war looks like. Not two hypothetical forces among themselves, not like a game, not like arrows on a map, but like one group of people, hundreds of thousands of people, who go kill other people who did nothing to them. That's what. This is what this war is like. And it seems to me that the most important thing that everyone should remember. People in the 5th year of the war. What should? Understand Donald Trump, Fico, Orban, and the rest who believe that Ukraine somehow has a lot of fun fighting with Russia and lose their citizens and not. That Ukraine simply has no choice. Because these Demirchevs came with opera blades and kill everyone. Right and left, civilian and military, captives and non-captives. And we see confirmation of this at the institutional level, not at the individual level. Some fucking Melchikov. And this is what you need to understand and remember. So it seems to me that such things needs to be distributed. Well, spread around. The investigation itself, or any of it. Retelling there are quite a lot of them now. And thanks to all media colleagues who pay attention to this in every possible way. Investigation. Well, support the channel. Financial traditionally possible on Patreon, link to which is in the description. And by purchasing an NVPN bypass tool. Locks, which allows you to decide what to watch, listen to, and read. YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, WhatsApp, Viber. In general, no. Stay in Putin's fold where they tell where Demirchev is. Cool general, not this terrible one. A monster that must be destroyed. In the very near future. VPN link in description. Their purchase and use. VPEV in Russia is still legal. Now let's get to another part, which is especially important to talk about. Russian citizens who think about whether to enlist in the Russian army, to receive money commensurate with. They've never seen anything like this in their lives. The system treats its own soldiers. Ooh, propaganda has a favorite picture. Our fighters are heroes. Commanders take care of people. We don't abandon our own. In correspondence, published in investigation. The picture crumbles to dust. Same. Zero preparation conveyor. When the general says, there is zero preparation. This is not a complaint for life. This is a confession. People go into battle not because they are ready, but because that's how the order works. If the system replenishes the trenches every day, new collective farmers like himself calls, then she has no motivation. Save a specific person. She has. There is a task to hold the line and show. Taking territory on TV. Further, fear as a general condition. No connection. There's no control. It's about combat, efficiency, and about psychology. Because that lack of control means No one understands what is happening. Nobody. I'm not sure the help will come. No one believes that he will be pulled out. Hence, the daily loss figures are gigantic. From here, the anonymity that burned, hence the army, which does not know how to do the most basic. Evacuation and rescue. Well, it's direct. Coercion with the help of detachment barriers. IN. Correspondence quoted by the diagrams. Demur. Chev recounts the conversation about how the commander set up a detachment and said, where no one is alive, will come out. This is, in essence, a confession. Practice we shoot our own if they try. Retreat. And this is important to understand. Zagrad. The detachment is not a legend about Stalin. This, a mechanism which, according to published fragments, discussed as a working solution. Separate reset. That is, killing one's own, like, disciplinary tool. In the same episode, says that commander, the assault squad killed 2 of its own. And it doesn't look like a crime because, which everyone is in shock. It looks like, well, these methods don't work any other way. And this explains a lot in Russian. Reality, why do people caught up in front? They often talk about fear not only in front of the enemy, but also in front of their own. The cynicism of the vertical too. Present, which poisons everything around. There is an episode of missing panties. Prosecutor, which seems like a farce. The general calls his subordinate and discusses how to find and return panties. A person with status. This is important. Mentioned because it shows psychology of management. They are capable, simultaneously conduct an offensive and discuss minor maintenance of important people. If compared to the scales, the prosecutor's panties, and the life of a soldier, you already understand that, will be more important for this system. For many, in a Russian army, there's a feeling of internal prison, which can be heard even in friendly conversations between generals, in correspondence, even such as Demirchev and another general discussing what they want. Leave, don't remember. They're sick of everyone, but they don't have the courage to do. Step. This is an important point. Even the top, who makes the decision and manages people, feels system like a prison, but instead of to break this chain, they continue. Pull it down on the soldiers. An army that uses for barges where the commander can reset his own in preparation. 0 is the army that will commit crimes against strangers and against her own people because she doesn't have the basic value of human life. Separately, I want to tell you about the episode with Kadyrovsky from the investigation publicly. The Kremlin and Putin personally often talk about Kadyrov's formations as brave and heroic. Well, remember all those TikToks? Troops. But investigation shows that within the army, the attitude may be completely different to others. And more importantly, very pragmatic. Who is really fighting? Who makes movies? Who wins awards? And who gets leave for the holidays? Details. An episode of October 22nd is described. The year when Ramzan Kadyrov publicly attributed to his units the capture, positions, demonstrated prisoners, and talked about frontline services. Minor sons, authors. They write that based on correspondence, it was possible to establish that some of these prisoners coincides with those whom the unit Demirchev's divisions were captured in the same days, which means a public PR plot and real military operation could be divorced. Some do the job, others take away the glory. Like A.P. Adanovsky, Akhmet in the course direction. Remember, when they had already put them back together, the entire front from which they fled, from the Kursk region and Apti-Lidinov began, record videos with prisoners and say, we've captured prisoners, but in fact it was done by the sea. Infantry and Ludnov had nothing to do with this. Absolutely no relation. Private. Demirchev's reaction in correspondence, which, and very characteristic, here are the heels, writes, it's about Akhmetova's people. And yes, this is rudeness. But more importantly, this is an internal assessment. Staged war, where the main goal is picture for TV. At the same time, investigation also shows duality of relationships. Despite complete contempt, Demirchev later receives an award from Kadyrov and, at the same time, gives practical advice. Do not conflict with the Chechens. Units and feed them equipment and artillery. For this you can receive a reward. That is, it's not conflict on principle, but bargaining within one system. You can hate colleagues, but must be built into a ritual. Loyalty, as it is established in Russian army. Again, we saw this between Melchikov and Apti-Lidinov. Many viewers often ask the question, so what? We already knew all this. Does it change? Something from another correspondence changes because similar arrays. This is not just shocking contents. Potential elements of evidence. Bosses, who spoke, who knew who, encouraged who should have stopped. This is also important for legal reasons, which will subsequently influence, involving all those responsible for actually punishment, and for those who, again, thinking about going into the Russian army, because often, even when they are told that, watch the recording of this Russian military, this is whining, they say, well, these are excesses in places this. There may be a 5th Brigade there separately. There's the 1st Army Corps of Eldrov, and etc., etc. No, this isn't all army, and it is important to understand this. In correspondence, show it that it's on the level. Commanders at the general level. Well, of course, attracting such generals, it is very important to take responsibility. Geneva Convention on the Treatment of Prisoners of War formulates the basic norm. Prisoners of war must in all circumstances be humanely treatable. Prohibited actions leading to death or serious threat, health, physical injury and violence, or intimidation. If you see talk about garlands from body parts, from ears, about recycling, about torture as tools, and about awards for reprisals, this is not some realities of war. It's direct. Encountering the prohibitions of international humanitarian law. Next question. Commander's responsibility. Roman statute of the International Criminal Court reinforces the team principle. Responsibility. The military commander carries criminal liability for crime forces under his command and control if not exercisa proprio control. And when, in correspondence, the boss suggests to reward people for killing prisoners it is important not only as a shock, it is important as answer to the question, what did you think? Command? This will be needed in court. These correspondence shows not bad, general, but normal operation of the regime. Not in the correct sense, but in the sense that described is the norm for Russian army. The regime as a whole rests on dehumanization. Prisoners can be disposed of, your own can be driven behind, rigid by detachment, and the boss can serve even the cowards of the prosecutor. The regime relies on impunity. Execution can be discussed as a reason to. Awarding the regime is for show. The taking of territory must be shown in box, and the real price of body and obscurity. Missing. This is paradoxically explains two things at once. Why is this war so cruel? Because the system is built on violence as a method. Management. And why does this war last so long? Doomed. Because the system in which no control connection, where is the preparation? Zero. And where I love people you can recycle, not capable of sustainable efficiency. She is only capable of destruction, including yourself. Well with, you are Michael Nike, and see you soon. All the best. Bye.